Oh, that is not who. Hi,
Hello.
Longley. Hey, hi. I wasn't sure with your icon there if you were going to be a troll or not. How you doing?
I'm doing well. My
Okay.
icon is deceiving. I'm actually like a very unattached person. Like I just I don't have any passion towards my physique. I just have a gym habit.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's totally
Well,
fine. We
let's.
talk about like presentation all the time. So yeah, thank you. Do you have a dream to share with us?
Yeah.
So I'm actually in a bit of a predicament because I just have like almost no dreams. But there is one dream I have to share with you guys because I had like my first dream in a while, and it was just absurd. Like it was very all over the place. And to preface to preface this, before I had this dream, I saw a brown recluse in my apartment. Like it like kind of scrammed out out from under the trash can, and then I thought that I squished it, which I don't like doing. But with brown recluses, like they're just on another level as far as I see them, and just because I know they reproduce so fast, and I thought I squished it, but then when I was talking to my roommates about it in the kitchen, I was like, "Yeah, I saw this brown recluse, and I squished it under the trash can, and we checked, and it wasn't under the trash can, so I didn't squish it." And this was kind of burned into my psyche. I guess that evening, and then leading up to that night, it had some effects on my dream because in my dream, I was at this doorway at my mom's house, like in at the doorway of her room, and this like face monster kind of comes up to me, and I mean I don't mean exactly like face monster, but like someone with a severely deformed face that isn't even natural deformity, like just like the image of like subconscious terror almost. And I like it's like I wasn't like psychologically stirred by this. It was just like my natural reaction was like to for some reason was to cover my eyes with my hands and then like do the act of crying, like not actually crying. I've never actually pretended to cry, and I don't really cry that often. But literally like just randomly just start crying with my hands over my eyes, and then the face monster went away, and I go to like lay in like the bed in my mom's room, and it's like sideways. It's not the normal like orientation, and first like I didn't even look who it was, but there were two people in the bed with like a space for a third person next to them who I didn't even identify. Like I just laid in bed next to two people. And then when I laid in bed, I noticed like I felt like a spider was on me. So in my or actually no, it wasn't. It was like I was worried about the spiders as I was laying down in the bed. And I see this brown recluse, but like for some reason in my dream state, I didn't think to do anything other than just to lay on it. So I just lay on top of this brown recluse, and I feel it squirming under me and shit. And I go to like move to actually like move like check for my physical body to see if I'm actually like have a brown recluse on me. And I kind of like half wake up, do that, and then just go back to sleep into the dream. And um the brown recluse is gone at this point, but I think that like what was it that I did? All that I remember after that is that I went back to sleep in the dream. So that's the most recent dream I've had.
That's a wild dream.
I know,
Um,
right?
I guess like the first thing that was kind of coming up to me is I'm curious if you feel like maybe there's something in your mother's psyche that you don't want to see and you need to deny it to yourself because
Mm.
it's uncomfortable to look at.
Not necessarily, but because like I really understand like where my mom is like hurt as a person and traumatized,
Yeah.
and like I really feel like at some level like my role in her life, like just being a parallel spirit to her, like my role in her life is almost as like a person who it's like she's always had this feeling towards me, and I feel like now in my older years looking on it, um I really feel like my relationship to her is one of like just like a spiritual support. Like it's like no matter what's happening in her life, she kind of just knows like her son is going to just be like a wellspring of like kind of support and that sort of thing. But so like I've really like I feel like at some level just come to really like accept my mom's flaws and like just like see her for who she is anyways. And but the thing that I left out of the dream account is that I also like I found this like I have like a thing for crystals, and I found this piece of quartz, but it was like almost like colored like amber, and somehow like okay, so it had like a piece on the end that was just regular quartz, and then this stunning like amber part. So I like break off the piece that's kind of ugly, and then inside of it, it has like glowing rutilations, like a radioactive mineral, and for some reason, like in the dream, it's like I had the decision between giving away the beautiful crystal or giving away the ugly one, and I totally just like without even thinking, just impulsively gave away the ugly one and was like just like adoring this alien ass crystal.
You gave away the ugly crystal and you kept the beautiful one, right? Or the half of
Yep.
it. That is really, I there's so much to this dream. I guess spiders kind of do represent connection, like their web, and like there is like a fabric of the universe that connects us to other people. And so it's your mom's room. There's a spider in her room, so maybe you're just saying like this is a connection I have to her. I'm curious about. It does feel like there was a theme of denial, to put your hands over your eyes and say, I don't like what I'm seeing, and now I'm going to pretend to cry to make this thing go
Right.
away.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get back to, like where. So also, just before we like, I'd like to just tech, take one small step back and say, like the person, the terrorizing figure, sounded like it was a female.
You
Um,
know, it was almost a female, but wasn't like it was almost androgynous as well. Like it was so
okay.
deformed that it lost the characteristic of being even male or female.
Right. So the physical form may have, but did you have like a sense that it had more of a feminine energy to it? I guess that's
You know,
for some reason I was picking that up.
I may be being suggestible right now, but I
Sure.
do kind of feel like it may have been like a a feminine energy to it. Like it was like almost like maybe like a picture of like my kind of just feeling of like female beauty as being like
Mm,
it's just a deformation of that maybe
mm.
we
Yeah,
would
and it could also be like a dark feminine too, because I think sometimes we
Yeah,
have
the
this like
shadow.
this
Right.
beautiful part of like femininity, but also femininity is very wild, and it can be at its darkest like
Scary.
venomous. Yeah, like it could be what annihilates us. Like the thing that gives us all love, like the source of love is the thing that could like murder us, like
Yeah.
it could take all that love away, or
Yeah.
it's
So
all consuming.
it's that polarizing thing. It's like one side you have like, the for what is the scariest, the opposite is like the thing that attracts us. And so you're looking at the opposite side of that in that moment, and your natural want was to cover your head, cover your face from seeing that dark part of it.
yeah.
So that's what was interesting. Like you
Yeah.
didn't have a fight or flight response. You literally, what would you call that,
Eh,
Stephanie? Like
to cover your
feign
eyes, I just.
ignorance.
Oh yeah, like I think feigned like
It kind of
attunement
was.
too. Yeah, like to say I'm just gonna like make this person go away, but also the crystal is very symbolic too, like
Mm,
for you to say I want to keep like the beautiful part of this, but I don't want that ugly part. And like cuz we want to naturally compartmentalize and say I'll keep the good and I don't want the bad, but people are inherently flawed. And we all have these like parts of us that are really hard to tolerate in ourselves, and other people, it's hard to tolerate them in other people too.
Yeah, and I'm really a believer in like the idea of like a higher form of forgiveness where like almost like anyone can take incarnation into any being. It's just like at some level we're just spirit, and what happens in human form is like just something to learn from. It's not good, it's not bad. it's good to maximize good and minimize bad a lot of times with like our systems of making things peaceful. But like at some level, it's not our job to succeed in that. It's our job to just, find peace in this life and grow as spirits, I think.
Do you feel like finding peace in life sometimes could look like or erring on the side of denial, or like breaking off the ugly pieces and throwing them out, like, or giving the ugly piece away and keeping like like there's like, how like that phrase, ignorance is bliss?
Yeah, I feel where you're coming from here. Like I do feel like on one hand, it's not asceticism. Like I don't believe in asceticism, but I definitely like like more recently, and this kind of ties into the dream. More recently, like a big kind of, I guess, point of emphasis in my life was that like I just like stopped having sexual craving. Like it's like I still have my libido, but I just do not have sexual craving anymore. And and that's something that's kind of come in my mind also, like as it ties into just like sexual identity itself. Like it's like if you don't have sexual craving, part of like the part of you that would want to go and form a family and like invest in a lot of ways is kind of like cut off in a way. It's like I fully enjoy like forming like meaningful relationships. Like that's like the whole kind of like that's like a huge driving force in my life. But as far as like the the bondage of those relationships, I maybe just kind of have I don't know how to put it. Like I may have just kind of like given up that side of things and just like taken on this kind of perceived role as like a just a person who is in it for the, I guess, like the improvement of myself and others.
Yeah, you're looking for growth. I mean, and it's interesting you mentioned like a loss of sex, or like that you don't feel sexual energy right now, or you have your
Yeah, the
libido, but not.
libido.
So sexual energy is like the same energy as like creative. You sound like you probably already know all of this, but like the energy of creativity, is there something in you that's trying to create something else right now? Like where are you putting that energy into?
I would say that I put it almost entirely into uh, I don't want to use the word spiritual, but like occult growth. To like in a sense, I had this like image almost of we're in the cycle of rebirth, and there there's a quality to that which is just, if you're really examining it in a certain kind of way, is very very unsettling. And
Mm.
but within that examination, like that kind of frame of almost just viewing that this kind of matter of spirituality and suffering and things like that, there's also the perspective that like there's this calling deep inside when you come to that state of examination, that like the normal mode of healing is not going to do it for me. I have to, find this kind of final treasure of cutting off the chains of rebirth almost. And it
I
sounds abstract, but it's kind of like
Yeah.
a theme that happens to a theme
Uh,
of kind of
I would
spiritual
note
life.
it. I'd like to note one thing. You are kind of talking in some like very big forms, and like the best way to kind of like approach some of this is to make sure like we're talking about your feelings about some of this too, like where it's coming from personally.
Like, yeah,
So
your personal experience. Like one thing you've mentioned, I see a parallel, like a spider web can be something you get bonded and trapped in and you can't get out of that web. And you're saying it sounds like maybe your attractions are changing, the type of women and female you were attracted to. Maybe you're integrating a new anima inside of you right now, and that calls for some isolation for the rebirth. You need time to like gestate, like alone with
and
your own energy. I'm curious about like your relationships. Like you want a relationship that expands you, that you can grow in, but you have to have commitment for that growth.
Hmm.
and I do kind of feel like there's some like you've mentioned how the aesthetic really isn't like your focus right now, but there's still something there that's
Where
binding you
I
to
guess
that
we're asking you to
aesthetic.
speak from like a personal experience of like women. Like, is there anything recently with a woman in your life, or that you're changing the way you view your own personal relationships, I guess?
Definitely, and like to address some things that you both brought up earlier in it, to kind of like, I think that like bringing it down to a more personal perspective of things would be better to explain like the reason why
Mm.
have these kind of spiritual, out there ways of viewing things. And to kind of like explain a little bit about my personal psychology, I was essentially like, as far as I remember, born without the experience of pleasure in a lot of ways, like just entirely anhedonic. And I've never pretty much in my life had like passions or ambitions. And so like the need for spirituality is almost like an undertone that has always been there in my life. It's like there, I cannot come to kind of philosophical acceptance or
Well,
metaphysical
we're
acceptance or
gonna
that
have to
sort of
back
thing.
up here for 1 second. What do you mean you were born
So like
without needing
I
I'm caught
have
on
like
that too. Sorry.
so like I
Yeah.
have like bodily experience of like energy, I think. Like it's like my body itself can go through like an orgasm or go through these kind of just various kinds of pleasurable and ecstatic experiences. But at some level, I guess like I was just born not, I guess, like enjoying those kind of things in and of themselves. Like
Well,
the
when you
experience
say
of
you're
pleasure.
born not doing it, why do you have that feeling even as a child though? Like where are you
I'm
getting
not sure
that
because it's usually
sensation?
associated with trauma.
Well, right. So that's I guess that's what I'm trying to ask is like something like we probably most of us probably aren't thinking of that kind of meaning, that kind of joy or like experience of what you're talking about from a young age. So the fact that you're even considering it at such a young age is like I'm just curious why you even would think about that. Not that it's wrong. It's just I'm
Mhm.
curious why was that even coming up at such a young age?
Well, like one of my earliest memories was like when I was 4 in my grandparents' kitchen, and I had this
Hmm.
like deep like calling almost. It was like with my life, I am just at some level, I just came to this like recognition that like I don't have ambition towards those ordinary kind of things that people do. Like I want something that like almost ties into the nature of myself as a being, and like I
Okay,
almost.
so I'm gonna stop you for 1 second there so we can reflect something back. You're
Mhm.
what you're doing in that case is you're making judgment of what the world expects at that point, or what the world when we say like society, when we say that people like most people want to do this, most people want to do that, that is an internal judgment of how we're perceiving the world to be. And so at that
Mhm.
moment, what you're doing is you're looking at this idea of what life could be, and you're reflecting it back to yourself and saying like, no, that I can't, that's not for me.
I
So
think maybe
so
the part of the saying like that's not for me is a way of like understanding what was I was feeling at that time, because
right.
like at
So
the time
who
it
was
more so
presenting
just
that
felt
to
like
you?
ambition is not my thing and passion is not my thing, but not at a level of recognizing those as ambition and passion, but
No, but
really.
someone was presenting that to you. So did you have like was it your father or someone in your family that was very ambitious, or that was like working very hard, that may have not been in your life as much at that point?
Hmm. I would say no. It's more like almost like I didn't feel like I had like any separation from my family, in the sense that it's not like I was too close or too far. It was like my family was just there for me, and like I just felt like completely safe and accepted. But and that's what makes this
But
kind
there
of
was a
thing for
fear
me
of like some
very.
of maybe having much ambition might pull you away from that kind of safety, though.
Well, it was almost like I had nowhere to go. Like I didn't have to like
Mm.
I didn't feel that there was anywhere to go to like do anything other than grow. Like it's like I have everything I need, and I don't aspire to have more than I need almost. It
Can
doesn't
I?
seem rewarding to me.
Yeah, can I reflect something or ask a question?
Sure.
So I guess something that came up for me when I'm thinking on this is I've heard my therapist has told me once that some men cannot love a woman fully until their mother dies. And I know you said that you see your mom as like a parallel spirit, but some moms find like pleasure in their sons, like emotional attunement, and they almost take up all of your psychic energy as a son.
I know. I hate to say it, but that disfigured woman is his mother to me, his mother's shadow, and I don't know why that keeps sticking in my head.
I,
And
But
I
one
it's
could
other
see
like,
that. I
thing,
could see
you
that.
also spoke about pleasure, and so about being born without pleasure. One thing I'm thinking about is that, there's different types of pleasure. Obviously, you sound like you are like like hedonic happiness or eudaimonic happiness, like the short term, and then the meaningful happiness. One thing is we can't, when we're cut off from all feelings, we can't experience joy. If we're saying I don't want to feel sadness, we actually like numb ourselves to joy and pleasure and meaning. It's like you can't amputate off your arm, like both your arms, and then like still have use of your hands, like you have to take the good and the bad. And you sound like you kind of understand that, but in the dream you're not doing that. That is your subconscious is saying, I don't want all of that, so I'm only going to keep this part. But you can't like have part of the cake, you know what I mean? Like you have to take it all in.
Yeah, I totally like I'm super interested in the side of things of like energy work and work on like the what we would call like the subconscious. Because I
Yeah.
think like I feel that, and I'm not trying to be pretentious here, that I'm like a very spiritually kind of
You have a lot
integrated
of
person. Someone
spiritual. Carl Jung would say some people have a very deep spiritual hunger that they're born with, and these are the people in
exactly, yeah.
AA that are like addicts to typically, and that they need to feed that spiritual hunger or else they might succumb to addiction. So you might be one of those people and you need to feed it.
Yeah, that's
that
definitely how I
that's what
feel,
I'm
but I
hearing
do feel
too.
like the subconscious stuff isn't worked out. Even though I've had certain
Correct.
spiritual, like successes,
Yeah.
those successes don't fix, just like the lower energy body almost. It's like working
I
with the upper energy doesn't
I
necessarily fix the lower energy.
Yeah, and speaking to you, I kind of feel and experience that part of you that is holding your hands over your eyes. Like we're trying to reflect something to you. That there's something in you that you're not seeing that doesn't that you don't want to look at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
like
we're all
even
like this, like we all like I just feel the resistance to it, and but I don't want you to spiritually bypass yourself through like spirituality.
I,
Hmm.
I want to reflect one other small thing real fast too that you said. It's like working from the top down. If like since you're into spirituality with yoga and chakras and stuff, it's like we don't work that way. You don't work from enlightenment and go to the base chakra, right? We start from the bottom, and so you kind of sound like you're just like eliminating that part and thinking that we can just like bypass
Well,
those
well, I
initial
will say
guttural animal
that
things.
when it comes to like the path and the way of enlightenment, it's definitely something that has its own almost sphere to it. It's not necessarily a thing that demonstrates an outward ability, an outward skill.
Right.
It's almost like you're just navigating to certain places and just familiarizing yourself with those places. So like a way of talking about enlightenment that I heard one other person say was almost like talking about like their kind of immersion into just like emptiness itself. Like it's not like it's not like you're necessarily resolving yourself totally in all of your subconscious tendencies, but you're you're engaging in a level of examination that would make it kind of harder to to have those kind of subtle impressions that we associate with karma.
Yeah,
So
and
you
it's
can, even
this
without
is
that
the
energetic balance, you can still like kind of get yourself into those heightened states of awareness that would maybe lead to enlightenment. But like there, that work in the subconscious is like its own whole thing. It's
sure. And
part of
the
the
thing
thing.
I'll reflect to right now is that you keep coming back to very like grandiose ideas, like these big overarching ideas, maybe the things that you heard and what you're doing right now is you're trying to internalize and understand them. But the
Yeah.
work is going to come from you exploring your own psyche
Your own lived
and digging
experience, and
into
like
your own experience.
maybe the
That's
next
true.
relationship you're in, just ask them, how are you experiencing me? Like how am I impacting you? Because the intention and like our soul and stuff, like we're actually affecting a lot of people around us. And
Mm,
just using like a real hard mirror, like that is
mm.
we weren't born here to figure out our afterlife. We're born here to be here now, you know?
Well, I think it's both of those things. Like
It
you're
is,
here to
yeah.
be here now, but like just in the sense that you're eternal spirit and you're always going to exist. But you're also not here just to be here now because as eternal spirit, you don't want to experience, the same kind of impressions over and over again. It's like you could talk about it as events that just keep occurring cyclically, but really it's just the impressions of these events that are
Yeah.
continuing to just impact you like
We
hail
might,
almost.
yeah. We have a few other people with their hands raised, but we're
Yeah,
gonna share
yeah.
dreams. But thank you for sharing with us.
Oh yeah,
That was
absolutely.
yeah, that was some
Thank you
really
so much.
interesting stuff. Thanks so much.
Yeah.